What is going on, everybody? Nav here, and today we have a really interesting topic, so make sure you stay tuned until the end of the video to get all the insight on how to stand out as a software engineer in 2025. Now, I'd like to start off by saying a few things. The first is, I understand how difficult it has been for aspiring software engineers and even for software engineers who are in the market currently, as the job markets in both the US and Canada have been very difficult, a lot of layoffs, and the numbers have been steadily declining. However, that doesn't mean that there's no jobs, and it doesn't mean that AI has taken our jobs yet, and I believe that AI is just another tool to help optimize, and I don't think it'll take software engineering jobs per se. I think Mark Zuckerberg's sort of take on that is very interesting. Now, do I believe it can in the future? Absolutely. I just don't think that we are there yet. But I have to make a whole separate video on talking about Mark Zuckerberg's comments there, as it's not relevant here. This is for people who still want to get into it, still want to learn in 2025, and are looking at how you can stand out. So number one thing I would say is get out of tutorial hell, because if a tutorial has 1 million views, it's likely that 999,000 other developers or engineers have followed that tutorial along with you. Now, if you really want to stand out, it's probably not a good idea. Now, I'm not saying tutorials are useless or don't do tutorials, as tutorials are a very valuable way to learn different stacks, different softwares, different techniques, and so on. However, I think that the mistake a lot of people make is they'll just copy line by line from a tutorial, and that's not actually what software engineering is about. It's not actually what programming is about. And I should say programming instead of software engineering, just to be more inclusive. Because I know in some countries and in some situations, you can't call yourself an engineer unless you have an engineering background and so on. But tutorials, it's not the way you learn how to code. And let me explain. So coding is a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of thinking outside the box. It's a lot of putting together components and pieces and structuring your software in a way. And I feel that what I'm noticing actually is me being a software engineer, I actually watch some of these tutorials sometimes if I'm learning something new. And I find that sometimes they don't do it the optimal way. I've had people creating React tutorial content, and in the tutorial, they did not use the most optimal code. I was able to optimize it further when I was following the tutorial. So that's a piece of advice number one, is get out of tutorial hell. And if you are going to watch tutorials, make sure that you are trying to think more critically as you go through them of how you can improve their code. How can you make this better? How can I add on to this? How can I change this and put my own style, my own spin? How can I take this further? Constantly pausing the video and doing it on your own before. I know they always say it in the tutorials, but make sure that you're doing that. Make sure you're actually doing that. So that's advice number one. Get out of tutorial hell. So let's talk about the second thing, the second most important thing, I would say, if you want to separate or kind of, stand out, I should say, from other software engineers or other programmers. So let's say you've gotten out of tutorial hell, and then you ask Nav, well, what do I do now? I don't know what to do. Well, the question is, you are going to learn how to read documentation. Yes, reading, yay, my favorite. As a software engineer, it's really, really, really important that we understand how to go through documentation, that we understand how to break down documentation, Stack Overflow, understand step by step that the people designing these frameworks, the companies designing these programming languages have created these wonderful documentations that explain to you what they've created and how you can use it. It's kind of like watching a tutorial on how to use a specific drill. I see it that way, as a tool in a toolbox, because when you are a construction worker and you're using a drill, it's really important that you know how to use the drill, but knowing how to use the drill isn't going to build you a house, right? And following a tutorial on how to build a house isn't really the best way, because you're going to see that mistakes that contractor made. You're going to say, oh, I could have done it like this. I should have done it like that. I don't really like the structure of that house. And that's the same thing in programming, and that's what I'm saying. So what you want to do is design your own house. And what I'm saying is reading documentation is really important because it gives you the knowledge of the tools, but doesn't chain you down to tutorial being the only possible things you can build. So you understand how to use something like Angular, and now you can go out and build and structure your own applications. So the second piece of advice to stand out is build unique projects. Come up with an idea. Ask ChatGPT, ask Google Gemini to come up with some personal project ideas. And it could be in any stack you like. If you're doing Python, try to maybe use Python Selenium and automate something, automate a daily task, or try to use Python to do something right with an API call. If your stack is Angular with the Java Spring Boot backend, then maybe you want to build a full stack application to handle your finances. Now, this application can already exist, and that's totally fine, but it's unique because there's no tutorial, no one else has done it. It came from your mind, and you had to translate the documentation into the application. Now, by doing that, you are now putting yourself in a position where when asked about this project in an interview, you can deeply explain every piece and structure, and you can always in your learning journey come back to this project, add on to it, improve it, take it a step further, build something you're actually going to use, build something you need, build something you want. And I think that you'll find a lot more value. You'll stand out a lot more because you'll understand the core principles a little bit better. So now the third piece of advice, and this one is kind of something you probably don't want to hear it a million times. Make sure you understand how to solve like medium level leak code questions. Make sure you understand all the data structures on there. And I'm not saying that you need to know how to solve all the questions on there, but when asked to perform a binary search and optimize it, when asked to, traverse a tree or use a linked list in some way to solve a problem, it's important that you are at least aware of those data structures, when their use cases, and how to use it. So my approach is usually when I'm given a problem is, which data structure is this problem? So if you know all the data structures, then you just need to ask yourself when given a problem is, which data structure is this problem? And then from there, you can extrapolate a solution. The best way to get good at leak code, practice. Now, this won't inherently help you like stand out because everyone else is doing that, but being very sharp in leak code questions is unfortunately the current component. Even in my current job, I am a software engineer, and my current job and my last job both asked me leak code style questions that were through my interviews with Microsoft, TikTok, all these top tech companies, they've asked me leak code style questions. So it's really important that even Apple, they all do. So it's really important that you brush up on that. So that's that's some housekeeping advice. Get that out of the way. So first is get out of tutorial hell. Second, try to build projects on your own. Use and make sure you read documentation for the stack that you're using and build something that you're going to use in the day-to-day to really stand out. And the third is make sure your leak code skills are always sharp. And the fourth piece of advice is to make sure that you pick stacks that are... Now, all programming languages and all stacks have their niche and have a market with jobs, for sure. I'm not doubting that at all. But I would definitely consider the types of companies you want to work for, the type of environment you want to work for, and pick a stack that's in line with those trends that is in demand. So for example, a lot of startups are using Next.js, they're using React, they're using frameworks such to build these like software as a service type of applications, or Airbnb style, and that's totally fine, right? And maybe their backend is a MongoDB, maybe they're using like a artificial backend like a Supabase or a Firebase backend, and that's totally fine. If that's the type of environment you want to go for, then make sure that you are studying those specific skills. It goes without saying. Let's say you want to work in a large corporation, a large enterprise level application. They might be using, Java Spring or Angular, a little more structured programming language. So, and the adaptability is also important, the ability to adapt from one to another, but don't confine yourself. Like if you go out and you only know how to use React, but you're applying for jobs that in companies that have an Angular or Java Spring stack, then the chances of you landing those positions, it's not zero. It's just, why put yourself in that position? Build something in Angular. There are plenty of resources on Udemy and on YouTube, and free or really cheap resources. You don't need to pay an arm and a leg for. You just got to put some elbow grease in it. Read the Angular has some of the best documentation, for example. Python has some of the best well-rounded community around it. JavaScript has so much support, and Python has so many frameworks, and there's so much you can do. So make sure that you're out there. So basically the fourth piece of advice is to pick a stack that is in line with where you're applying, the type of environment, the types of jobs that you're trying to get. And the fifth and final piece of advice, if you want to stand out as a software engineer, is nobody's stopping you from building your own application now, or your own product, or your own service. And it doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and it'll be extremely valuable. How cool would it be to put CEO of X company, not X as in the actual company, Elon Musk, but your company, on your resume, and actually create a business that, who knows, you might not even need a job. And I think that's going to be more apparent as the market, sort of big companies are, banking on this AI coming in, right? And then what happens is, I believe, is that there's all these little niches, all these little holes that are going to need to be filled. Kind of like, Salesforce came in with that big CRM, and then you have Microsoft Excel coming in and solving a data problem. And then, so as AI comes in, there's going to be these little holes within business that I believe your software as a service, your idea, your niche can solve. And even if it can't, it doesn't hurt. It can't ever look bad on your resume to build a software as a service and put it on your resume. Even if no one's using it, it's still better to have that unique, full stack, proper product. It doesn't even have to be full stack. It doesn't even have to have a front end. It doesn't have to be a web application. It could be something to do with machine learning. It could be a C++, like a video game, for all I care. You could put a video game on Steam, but I think what will really help you stand out is build something and release it to the public, right? And build, whether you want to build a company around that or not is up to you. Whether you want to charge money for it or not is up to you. The cost of running it and so on. And we've got all these free hosting platforms, but like building a video game and putting it on Steam in C++, let's say you're looking for C++ jobs, is really, really valuable. That could translate to a lot, and other developers are not doing that. They are not publishing their work to the public. Now, they're like, a lot of people will tell you go contribute to open source, but my whole thing about open source is it's really hard. Like, it kind of doesn't come off the same way as if you went out and built something and released it. So that's my big piece of advice, is build something and release it. So anyways, hopefully you guys found this video helpful. Please let me know in the comments section below any of your ways of standing out. Actually, don't do that, because then everyone's going to take your ideas. So leave a comment if you like the video. Make sure you like the video. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about what I said. I would say, don't give away your secrets. Don't do it. And I'll see everyone in the next video. Goodbye.